We have Michele from PhysioOne Wellness who's going to come on and tell her practice opening story. So I'm really excited for her to talk about how she got started in Georgia after moving from, there she is, after moving from Chicago. So whole experience, what it was like getting started, and how she went from mobile to subleasing a space. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you for the second time today.
I know. I'm so lucky.
um, so I was just rambling in the beginning because it's always awkward talking to myself in the beginning. So we're gonna get right into letting you share your story, and as people come in and out, if there's any questions, I'll let you know what's popping up. But mostly, we'll just go over kind of how you got started.
Okay. Okay. So should I start?
Yeah.
um, yeah. So it's such a good question. So we moved to Georgia in 2014, and I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, almost 4 and 2. And I had been working for a large hospital-based outpatient system in Chicago and loved it. I had a great, part-time gig that could go back to full-time, time off, all of that kinds of stuff. But I saw patients one-on-one. And so I was like, oh, am I going to love this? Is it going to be too hard to find this? Is this the diamond in the rough that I thought it was, that I thought I knew it was? And we moved to Georgia, and obviously as a working parent, you're kind of like trying to get your kids into all these different things. And I sort of trudged through a few years of working part-time for some other people, and I'd reached a point where I was like, I just have too much to offer and I just can't offer it. I felt like I was using a fraction of what I knew and what I'd cultivated for so long, um, in continuing ed classes and all these other things. And I've been working for just a smaller kind of sports med clinic. It was good, but with the struggle of not being able to see patients one on one, I felt like I was constantly like, oh, I want to show you this, but I can't. I don't have time. Of course, that part is happening in my head. I'm not saying that. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, great. Well, I'm going to send you an email later of a couple other things that I want to, because a couple of things I would want to say, because I felt like, oh, if I could just tell you this one education piece, you might actually move a notch forward in this next week, and it won't take you as long. I felt like I could answer that question. Hang on.
Oh, whenever you clicked, the volume went away.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we there now? Okay,
Yep.
good. Sorry.
So at
I didn't
this
want to switch.
point, when you moved from Chicago to Georgia, how many years after PT school were you? Like, how many years into your career were you?
Great question. I was 15 years out at this point.
So you had
So,
some experience under your belt to
yes.
not want to only give one little piece in the session.
Yeah, so I was itching. And, I had an interesting career in the fact that I graduated in 1999. And I think you and I were talking about this earlier. Like, they gave us a lecture on what you can do with your PT degree that isn't physical therapy. So we were like, all right, there was a lot of hustling to get a job in the beginning. I started out as an aide with my PT degree and a license. And I was like, all right, well,
Yeah.
here we
And
go.
that's because the
$10
market
an
was so
hour.
saturated.
Was that? Yes, it was very saturated. Very saturated. Hard to get a job. Even many friends worked in admin of a hospital for a year before they started out as PT. I mean, it was a really wild kind of time. So all that to say, I had an interesting career in that way, and I lived in the city. So I got married later in life. I was like 33, had kids later. So I did 10 years of practice. and then got married and then had kids. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, I know how to do this PT thing, but I don't know how to do this mom thing, you know? So I kind of was like, all right, well, what are we going to do? So I kind of stayed in 100%, took continuing ed, did all these things, but then the side, I was like, all right, I'm a mom at home. Okay, great. And now how do I do this? And I was lucky. I worked with a lot of other moms. So they're like, you need to do this to get your kid to sleep. And I was like, okay, great. And now I'm going to go treat my patient. So I had this
That
beautiful
was the learning.
experience. Yes, I had this beautiful experience of being like a new grad parent 10 years into PT while knowing PT. And then you think about that, then 15 years later, right? So now I have these younger kids. I'm like catapulted into a whole new market, new colleagues. No, I didn't go to college around here. And I was like, okay, what do I do now? But I had this wealth of knowledge that I just wanted to use and tap into, but I just couldn't. I felt, and I searched, I really searched. I searched for all these different places. Can I find another treatment home, right? In
Yeah.
another practice, some other place? And I just couldn't find it. I just couldn't find it. I mean, I can't even tell you. It's just the other day I turned off all the Indeed, like, I just somehow I get the Indeed things of like, there's a job. Because I'd always be looking, is there going to be a place for me? And then I realized at some point, I was like, I don't think there is a place for me because I need to cultivate something of my own, you know, which was a weird push because I was like, I felt like I was in a gap. And I think you and I talked about this too. I had lots of friends who started their own practices much younger than me, right? So they had either kids younger. Like it is hard juggling that like mom work life balance thing. So they started younger and I was like, am I going to do this now? Like, is this, you know, should I have done this earlier? There was all this about timing, right? And with that, at some point I just had to say, I'm just going to jump. I'm just going to do it. It's going to, and, you know, looking back on it as I was reflecting on these questions, I know that I created a job for myself first, but now it's so much more than what it was. Like I initially was like, I just need to do this. I need to find some people who need what I have, and I'm just going to create a job, and it's okay. And then it's grown into so much more, right? Now it's really about creating something for the clientele that I want to treat, but it's more than just that job. It's like, oh, I want to create this experience for patients, clients, and an experience that can grow for other people to join.
I'm going to take you back a little bit.
Take me,
At
sorry.
that point when you were thinking about going out on your own and you have these other friends who have done it, were they pushing you at all to do what they did? Were you dissuaded at all, seeing how much work they put in? Are you still with me? You're good. You seeing the notifications? You're still here. If you click on the screen, then it mutes you. So just tap the screen one more time. There you go. Your volume's back. So at that point, were you thinking like, oh, I need to do this because I want what they have? Or was it more like, oh, I'm not sure, I'm a little nervous, they put in so much work? Like, were they pulling you? Were they like teaching you some things of here, showing you the ropes? Like, what was it like?
So that's so interesting. So it was a little bit of both, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were definitely the reality checks because I have like real deep authentic relationships with these women, and they'd be mostly women, right? Mm-hmm. There were definitely men, but most of the women at the time were my girlfriends. They were like, it's great, but it's a lot of work. So then
Yeah.
you're like, ooh, you know, it was, and so, but they, I mean, all of my closest friends are doing that. That's what they're doing. And they're doing it because I think that they're strong, independent women and practitioners that want to create something greater than what they have had the opportunity to practice in, mm-hmm. right? So I think it's a little bit of both. Definitely like, yeah. It's a lot, but I'll help you.
Okay.
So it was a lot of It was like, it's a lot, but I'm going to help you. And then you realize like how much it really is, but not that it isn't rewarding for sure.
No, but no one can prepare you for it until you're in it and you're feeling it.
Yeah.
I'm always curious because that's how I got started doing this and helping other PTs, because I had friends that were like, oh, I think I want to do this. And, you know, in the beginning, I was just like, here's my template, here's what I did, and like sharing as much as possible, because once you are in it yourself, you want as many people to do it too. Like, oh, look how much better it is over here. But yeah, there's always that like reality check once you're in the thick of it.
For sure. And I think a lot of it too, which I think this kind of leads into one of the other things that you would kind of ask me about at some point is you're just kind of getting going. You're just, I mean, it seems like the biggest piece of advice everybody gives you is just jump, just do it, just do it, just do it, just do it, just do it. And so if you ask any of them, they'd be like, I don't know, I just started doing it. You know, like it always is that I just started doing it and then they kind of figure it out.
Right. And some of the people that are here are student PTs, some are aspiring future PTs, and some are owners, right? So for the people that haven't actually done it yet, what did that look like? Did you have a part-time job? Did you keep your clinic job? And like, what was that dynamic?
Yeah. So the reality turned out to be a little different than the plan, right? Isn't that how it always works out? You make a plan and then it falls apart, right? So the plan had been keep the part-time gig, right, which is what I was doing, and continue to do that, and then on a part-time basis, like open up my own space, right? So I had the logistics of it all, right, is that I had a personal training studio friend, right? He owned this personal training studio. He had this room that he used to store his bike and all sorts of, let's call it what it is, junk. And I was like, hey, what do you think about cleaning that out and letting me use it? I am one of those people who make themselves, I'm like, oh, I can work in that really tiny space. I'm like, I can make it work. I can make it work kind of person. So he was like, yeah, let's do it. And he's like, I need to keep this small sliver of a space for myself. So we hung this curtain up so he could put his junk in this side. And then I had this pretty decent sized space. It was okay. And that was November of 2019.
Yeah.
So I treated some clients. He had a good mix of like age related folks that I would have seen, you know, middle age to upper, and then some youth and whatever. So I thought this would be a great kind of symbiotic relationship, right? We're going to like cross refer, all of that. And it started to get some momentum within the first 2 months. And then all of a sudden I was probably seeing 4 or 5 on this day and a couple over here on this day. And then 2020 hit. So then that March hit and I was like, oh, okay, this is done. All right, well, we're not doing this now. And at that moment I had a third grader and a first grader, and they were not a business that could stay open. And even though I was technically physical therapy, I was like, I don't know what's happening here. Let's just shut the doors on this one for now. So I kept it as is. And then my part-time gig really didn't need me at the time. So I kind of just did my own thing. So we pushed forward through the summer. Everyone did stuff different. Georgia pushed out school, did some like online stuff, right? Virtual, I guess you call it, right? And then funny enough, like I had followed Facebook groups of people who were doing mobile practices. And I was like, all right, I can do that. Let's do that. All right. So I had some people ask me about it, and I was like, great, I'm just going to get a backpack, which I did. And I went through plenty of metamorphoses of different backpacks and, you know, spent way too many hours researching mat tables that were light. I'm 5'1", and everything doesn't really fit me. And I was like, well, I like the backpack, tried the hauling. Anyway, all of that to say I did lots of that. And I spent way too many hours figuring that out, but I did that. So, and that was a wonderful growth experience because I now had no stress. in a sense, right? I could
Mhm.
grow as much as I
There's
wanted
no
to.
overhead.
There was no overhead,
Hmm.
nothing. And that was, it actually ended up being a huge relief. And I felt in control of every piece of the puzzle. And at the time, if you flash back, those COVID times, everybody was very stressed about cleanliness and all these things. And so I was like, I'm a healthcare professional. I can control this. Like
Hmm.
as much as I could, right?
Yeah,
I
right.
can control this. I knew that I could keep my equipment clean. I knew how to prevent things as much as I possibly could. I could stay on top of it. And so for that reason, I think a lot of people were very comfortable. And I still had clients into 2022, I think, that still were like wearing masks and they wanted me to come. And um, it was also a beautiful thing too, because I got to see a side of physical therapy that I really didn't know I would enjoy, which is going into people's homes. But it ended up opening up a whole world of things for people. So I just gained another perspective. I continued to learn, right? I could look at your pillow and your desk setup in COVID
Yeah.
times. I could do all of these things and make all of these adjustments, which was awesome. So that growth process was really fun that I never would have chosen on its own.
Yeah. I think that is just going through home care at some point is such a valuable experience as a PT. Like I did it for 9 months when I was opening House of PT because for me that was like a non-competing service that I could do that per diem, totally different demographic. And you really learn that what people value is the education that you're bringing because you're not lugging a ton of stuff with you. I was not bringing a treatment table, right? I was treating people in fifth floor walk-ups, so I'm not carrying the treatment table with me. I'm only 2 inches taller than you, but I'm not stronger for sure. Yeah, so you did that for 2.5 years,
Yeah, just about.
maybe a little longer because I met you in 2023.
Yep. Yep. So I did it from, I think I saw my first client at home in like October of 2020. And then I went into physical location again in November of 2023. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that transition because this is something a lot of people kind of start out with mobile. And then when you get to a certain volume of patients, a lot of your day is traveling and you realize,
Sure.
okay, if I want to see any more people, then I have to eliminate some of these 30-minute blocks to get around. Right.
Yeah,
So we started working together in the summer of 2023,
that's right.
right? Because you saw that I was running on Anna Maria Island while you were vacationing.
That's right. Yep, that was my sign. I had already had multiple, and then I saw that, and I was like, "This is my gal. We're gonna do this."
Yeah. So summer of 2023, we were getting ready for like the fall busy time. You were already pretty much close to max capacity of what you could treat in a day going to each patient's home.
Hmm.
And we kind of talked about going back into subleasing in a gym
Hmm.
and what that transition would look like for people who are comfortable with you coming to their house. And also the little bit of, from my perspective, if I could say it, like a little bit of hesitation because you tried it and had to
Totally.
stop it. So like, going through that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, you're right. I was at the point I was like, I'm done rolling around with all of this stuff. I was physically more tired at the end of the day. I mean, the realities were, I was physically more tired. All of my note time was getting taken up in like travel time. I had a family. I was like, this cannot happen anymore, right? I knew I needed to go there. And you're right. I was a little hesitant because I wasn't convinced even that the situation that I'd been in pre-COVID, in hindsight, I was like, oh, I just didn't think it was going the direction I wanted to. So even when it did shut down, I was kind of like, everything happens for a reason, right? Um, but the next location that kind of came up was something I had a fairly confident vibe that it was going to go okay, but I was still nervous. There's still a risk. There's still a leap. And,
Yeah.
I'm relatively risk averse as a general matter. I am. I would like to be less of it. I do try really to push myself as much as possible into those risky situations, but I was nervous about it. And in hindsight, I realized what you and I have talked about before is that that confidence just comes from people showing up day in and day
Yeah.
out. And I wasn't nervous about my skills. I just needed to know that they were going to come, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even though I had that abundance mentality of knowing that they would, I just needed to really see it and feel it. And ultimately, that's what happened. So, moved in November, and the growth was consistent and steady, right? I didn't get a lot of pushback from people that I wasn't coming back to their homes. I think people understood, and the ones that had known me long enough, which ultimately most people had now known you pretty long, and once you've been in their home, you're already friends, right? You already have a close knit. They want you to be successful, and they realize that your time is precious too. And so I was surprised at how many people continued to travel. Most people that I saw, I didn't travel more than 30 minutes from my house anyway. So most people that I saw were still willing to make that extra step to come see me. And
Yeah.
now, 6 months later, I realized some of their lives have become even richer. Some of them have joined the gym that I'm in. Some of them have, they don't feel the pressure because I verbally give the messaging of this fitness environment can be for everyone, but it doesn't have to be for you. There are so many opportunities for you to exercise. You don't feel like I'm pushing you towards this one, which I think is really important because not everything is everyone's cup of tea. But it actually ended up being good, right? So I grew from however many people were seeing me at that moment to that, let's call them 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
5 to 10. And it was a slow burn, right? I think I might have been at a slow spot. And then each week through, I think it was at full capacity. You might know this better than I do. Like by the end of December, and
Yeah.
you're nervous too because you've got 2 holidays in there. You've got Thanksgiving, you've got Christmas and New Year's, I should say 3,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it steadily grew over the next several months to what was a full schedule for me.
Yeah. I think what's important to note during that time is, and you said it with the like there's no attachment to join the gym and do the style of workout in the place that you happen to have your office. It's great if this
Yes.
fits you, but it doesn't mean just because you see me here, you have to be a member and love this style of working out. I think having that mindset also of there's no pressure to follow me if you wanted me to come to your home and I no longer can come to your home. There was no, you have to do this and there's no choice. And because you let everyone know all the information and make their informed decision, a lot of people just wanted to stick with you. And I think our goal was, you kept saying after the holidays, that's when I'll worry about getting a full schedule. And then every time I saw you, you were like, it's even busier. Next week's even busier. When do I stop taking new patients? And it was around December where we were like, okay, your schedule is full for January. So we need to put a pin in this for a second.
Yes. 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 Calendar management, scheduling people, probably the hardest part of my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one job I didn't do in the continuum of physical therapy, and we've
Yeah.
talked about that. That's the one I regret not doing.
Yeah. Hey, Delphina. Yeah, so and that's one thing I always said. I laugh at this all the time. Like, I couldn't wait to get my PT license because I would never do reports again. I would never do admin again. And then that's all I do. And now I teach people how to do their schedules. Like,
Totally.
the irony of 24-year-old me
Absolutely.
being like, I'm done with this, you know.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
it's
That's
more
true.
about cycles of learning, right? Layers and
Yes.
layers.
I think I completely agree.
And on that note, the other thing that I like to ask is 2 or 3 lessons that you have kind of gone through in your first year of business. So probably looking
Mhm.
at like 2023, or maybe even looking at like the landmark of you going into the physical location.
Yeah, I think
Right.
so. I feel like this might sound a little redundant, but I think a lot of it was like how much I needed to learn. And I think that can be very just specific to me potentially. I set out a goal when I started practicing that I kind of really wanted. Because I was at that, because I graduated in '99. I was at this fork, right? It was
Mhm.
like I can go into sales where a lot of people were going, farm sales, med sales, all sorts of different things, or I can stick with this thing I really learned how to do. And I told myself I was going to stick with it. And when I did, I also kind of made that choice like, I'm going to be really good at this. And I'm not going to do anything else until I feel like I'm really good at it. Right. And in the process of that, what that ended up doing in some ways, I really leaned into continuing ed, practicing, teaching students, doing other things, like all of that. And I was kind of like, that middle management stuff, that's for the middle management. I'm like, I get it, but whatever, I don't have to do that. I just have to be really great at this. And so I think for me, I had to learn a lot of that. I had to kind of really go back. I mean, I'll make fun of myself. You're like, you have to block out your schedule. You can't just have this open schedule. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Like there were a lot of like obvious things that I think obvious that you had to say to me. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I should probably do that.
Mhm.
Cause I was like, whatever, I can do whatever I want
Right.
now. I really had that mentality
That,
and I was like, oh yeah, I got to get real methodical about this. Like,
yeah.
I really need to. But so I had to learn a lot and kind of come back and be like, oh yeah, this is what I should do. Now I really have to look at the numbers. I have to do this. Versus I chose kind of a rudimentary way of sort of managing this. I mean, here's my Excel spreadsheet. Here's who I saw today. Here's how much I took from them. Blah blah blah. That type of thing, which is
Yeah.
fine, but it wasn't robust enough for me to really see it and understand it and then make decisions based on it. But I didn't choose that route in my growth and learning process as a PT because I was like, nope, I'm going to stay as PT. Nope, I'm not going to manage people. Nope, I'm not going to do that.
Mhm.
Like I managed students and other PTs that I worked with on this like project or whatever, but
Clinical side.
I didn't look at the other side. I was like, I get it from a business standpoint, and I did. Like, I knew you got to make the customer happy and you need to have a good experience. And a lot of like the soft skills that you talk about, I
Totally.
got it. The other stuff, I was like, oh, yes, I need to learn that. And
You're
then I
laughing.
put,
The
what's
two
that?
people that the two people that have popped in the last couple minutes while you're talking about this, I've said, you've heard me say this before. We go out on our own because we want to do whatever we want. Like I want to be in control, so I'm my own boss, which means that there is no boss. And then when
Right.
you do whatever you want all the time, the patients kind of do whatever they want also, and your schedule is kind of doing whatever it wants because it's just wide open. And sure, you want to see me at 7 a.m. on Thursday, you want to see me at 4 p.m. on Saturday, it's there. I think at one point you were seeing patients on Sunday, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're not
I was
seeing
like,
patients on,
I can make it
yeah,
work.
we're
It's 1 hour
not
of my
doing that
life. That's what I
anymore.
would do. I'd be like, it's 1 hour. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'll listen to a podcast on the way there. Listen to one on the way back. I got something out of it.
Mhm.
And I did. And
Right.
I don't regret it. I
For a
had
period.
to learn
Mhm.
and I had to go through that. But yes, I
Yeah.
was like, it's
If
fine. But I enjoyed the treatment, so I was okay with it.
yes. But if
But
we don't set the boundaries, other people decide the boundaries for us.
that's right.
So that's
Yeah.
what, the calendar management strategy that I teach is just putting a start and end to your day, counting the number of slots and seeing, oh, if I have 10 slots and I want to see 12 people. Well, right, this actually can't grow to where I want it to. I need to figure out, what does this look like on paper, and can I still do school pickup, school drop off, and the other things?
Right. That's
Right.
right.
And the non-negotiables go in there first, and then we can reverse engineer, okay, what do we want the patient schedule and the work schedule to look like?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was in the big bucket of I have a lot to learn. And on that, one other thing too, I want to say, just because I think this is sort of funny too, I think I took a step back from social media a little bit too. Like there was a push when my kids were younger. So I have a 2010 and a 2012. Like I joined in 2008. You know, I'm like the Facebook person, right? Because I'm that generation. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to post this and that. And then all of a sudden I was like, I don't know if I want to post my kids too much. And I didn't want to do certain things. So then as you and I got together, I was like, whoa, social media, what? I mean, that's another thing that you'd be like, you need to do this. And I was like, yes, I do. What is that? So
Mm-hmm.
those are that goes into that whole learning thing. I think I've had probably a big jump in learning that I've had to do on that back end types of stuff, on that marketing side and the kind of business management side.
Yeah.
Those were big things. Yeah.
Right. And that's the stuff that we don't learn as PTs. I love psychology, so that's why I love marketing so much. Right? That's what
Mhm.
my undergrad degree is in. So like I just love looking at, why do we make decisions? Why do we click on this ad but we don't click on that one? So I like to take those courses and then dilute them down and share them over coffee in a way that we can actually apply it to PT and filter out the things that aren't necessary for a small business, right? There are like,
Sure.
I've had people try to take on robust CRM systems and things like that that are meant for hospitals. They're not meant for someone who's trying to do 20 visits a week.
Right. Yeah.
So like
And
figuring out, what do you have to learn from the start and what can I learn, and then you just take the summary of.
yes. And I certainly appreciate the summary and the how to.
Yeah. Okay. You did good joining the live. That was seamless.
I
I think
did
you
okay.
were here before I was.
I know.
So
Although I didn't turn off my, I'm trying to minimize my social media scrolling. So my Apple thing came up, was like, you've had your time limit. And I was like,
no, this doesn't count as scrolling. Another question, which might kind of go into some of the lessons, but what's something that you do now running your business that you didn't know you'd be doing when you opened the business? Like, what's something surprising?
So I originally thought about this. And when I thought about it, it was like, kind of like, ooh, I didn't realize how much time I would spend on it. I feel like that almost is like a repeat answer. So
That's
I'm
okay.
like, well, what else would
Yeah.
I say? But I don't think I realized how much. Oh, I have a better answer, I think. But I don't think I realized how much time I would spend on it. But I also didn't realize how much I would lean into, like, you and I like to talk about some of these books and stuff. You make
Yeah.
suggestions on sales books or this, or I'll send you something. You're like, I love that person. Then I just go down a rabbit hole, and that person, I'm reading a book by them. I didn't realize how much it was going to tap into a lot of the nonfiction types of books and learning experiences like Atomic Habits and things like that, that I do enjoy learning about. I didn't realize how much they would affect my practice, right? And
Yeah.
how I choose things. And I didn't realize how much, and how much I would enjoy it too. Like, ooh, I can't wait to get in the car and listen to a little bit more on Atomic Habits, so that, and then think about the connection points
Mm-hmm.
between something that's being said there, and then I weave that into my practice in the conversation I have with my patient the next day about, all right, well, how do we attach these exercises to this thing that you do every day? And I'm like, oh, I learned that from this. And we all do that in everyday life, but I didn't realize how much it was just going to light my fire within the growth of all of this, you know?
Yeah. I love that for a couple of reasons. One, because earlier we talked about not being able to take as many continuing education courses as you want to at this point. And I think that came up with Matt last week, and that's what prompted our conversation of like, oh, I wish I could take this course on gait analysis, or I wish I could take this course, but I have to learn this business stuff right now at this stage. And it's nice to hear that you do enjoy learning the business part of it too, right? It's
Yes.
obviously different, but it does relate to patient care because, and I think that's why I love the psychology piece so much, because if you learn how to be better in relationships, it doesn't matter if those relationships are with clients or your family or yourself. And it's like opened up this whole other aspect of learning.
Yes. And it's kind of sharpened even more so my skills of working with my clients, right? So like it just it gives you just another touch point and also another validation in how you interact and make choices with them, because ultimately they're following what you say because they believe in you and they believe you
Mm-hmm.
have the solutions for them. And ultimately, we're selling them on fitness and
Yeah.
exercise and whatever tools that you have in your bag. You have to sell it to them. I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
terrible when you
We,
say it that way but we
right.
are creating a sales pitch from a position of true empathy for what they're going through,
Yeah.
right? Like, because we really understand them, and we're not trying to sell them something that costs more or less. We're trying to sell them, like, I think if you follow this formula, this, we're going to do this and this and this, and if you do these few exercises these days, I really think you're going to see the results you're looking for.
Yes. And in regular terms, that's called sales,
Right.
marketing sales, right? In PT language, we call it therapeutic alliance and patient
Mm-hmm.
compliance. But getting a patient to comply to their plan of care and actually follow through with the things that we know they need to be doing to get where they want to go, like that's sales. You need to be able to
That's right.
build a relationship and explain why it's necessary for them to do it, like the why behind it, which I
Right.
know you read the book Start with Why
Mm-hmm.
also, right? Another one of my
Love it.
favorites. Nobody got that right on the coffee bag this morning. I was disappointed.
Oh, I missed that.
um,
Okay. I love.
well,
I must have missed your stories or something.
yeah. But you know, that relationship building is part of sales. And right now with you, we're talking about the next stage of business ownership, which is getting someone to treat within your practice, follow your model, follow the patient experience that you set up. And you are going to have to teach them some of the soft skills, which includes sales.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
Whether you're cash or out of network or in network, we still need to get someone to commit to the plan that we create and get them to show up. A personal trainer needs to do it too, right? It's not,
Yeah.
it's,
And I think it can be a hard skill. I'm not sure because it's been a bit of time since I've actually had a student because I've been a part-time and all of that. But like, I know when I did have students, like those first 15 plus years, like that was one of the harder things is teaching someone how to, well, use sales language, how to close that deal, right?
mm-hmm,
How to make sure that they bought into, here's your summary of what I found for you today. Here's what I think that you should do. Here's what we're going to do moving forward. And getting them to realize too that like they're showing up for you because they believe in you. But if they're
mm-hmm.
canceling a lot, that's not always the reason, but it can be one of the reasons that they just didn't buy
Yeah,
in, right? So I don't know where students are now because it's been a bit of time, and that those I know even when I was in school in the 90s, that was one of the things they were rolling out was like really trying to teach those soft skills
yeah,
because they were finding that people were coming out without them. So I think it
yeah.
was growing in those years that I was in practice. I'm sure it's gotten much better now.
I think that's always something that we have to work on. And, going back to the concept of, um, I want to do things my way, and that's why you open the practice, right? Is teaching someone why you do things the way you do and getting them to see this does make a difference if we put a bolster when they're laying on their back, or if we show them where to hang their belongings and we don't leave them standing in the front looking around, right? But I think sometimes, and I think you mentioned it early on, like you are so focused on being a good clinician that you focus on what your hands are doing and kind of forget that the positioning and the way you explain things and the tone of your voice, and if you sit side by side or you stand over them while they're laying on their back and you're explaining something in that position, how all of those things relate. I think that's just a constant, it's one of those cycles of learning that we go through of
Mhm.
like layers. So kind of to wrap this up, is there anything else that you wanted to share about your practice that you feel like would be helpful? Like the people that are watching this are PT students, PTs who are thinking about going out on their own, or people that are that own their own practice right now. Like those are the people on the planning PT.
So a lot in the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think so. I think I think the things that I would say the most are like, I agree with the advice of jump, do it. You can start with very, very, very little. I started with Word documents and just kind of like put it together. I think you can start with a very little amount. Um, People will buy what you're selling if you love it, right?
Yeah.
If you love what you do, and if you stop loving it because you're not happy with where you are, you have so many opportunities to change it. And the almighty hustle, like to get to where you need to be, taking the home health job, doing the this, doing the that, in the long run, it's so worth it because when you love what you do, you're so happy when you're doing it. And I'm so grateful that I get to experience being someone's physical therapist in my own setting now, doing my own thing, not worrying about I don't have enough time or any of that, getting better at not running over at all.
I knew this
Um, but
was going to be more than 30 minutes.
I know. But I didn't know how much time we had. So anyway,
We could
but
talk for hours, I know.
I think I would recommend it for anyone who loves the profession or loves what they do and finding that they cannot figure out another way to do it. Or if they are an ideas person and they're constantly throwing ideas out at their employer and they're not getting the results they want, like go for it. Because there really are enough patients to go around for everyone.
Yes. Abundance mindset. There's no
Yes.
competition.
There's no competition. There will always be someone for you. It's just like the right people come to you when you're in the clinic and someone else went to someone else. Like everyone who's meant for you will find you.
I think
Yeah.
that is a perfect way to end. And I really appreciate that you were willing to come on and do an interview for everyone, because I think your story and the amount of times that you've pivoted and reinvented, and it's not like, a lot of people think, okay, in order to have this business plan, I need to have this everything tied and neat and perfect ahead of time, and I need to have the most beautiful website before I press go. And it just shows that you can recreate, and as long as you listen to feedback of what you want and what your patients want, and you're staying true to your why, which was consistent throughout all of the different, right, the first gym, then going to your patients' homes, then the second gym, now bringing someone else into your space. The why has been consistent, even if the way it looks hasn't been.
That's right. Yeah.
And yeah, Yeah.
And you wouldn't say this, but I'm going to say this. I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't have hired you. I really wouldn't. I really wouldn't. If I wasn't working with you, I say hire, but really it's working. If I wouldn't have been able to get to this place with and enjoy the journey as much as I have if I hadn't have met you. So I do think, and I looked at a lot of different coaches, and I wasn't sure if I was going to go this route. So I do agree with Matt. Hire a coach. It's worth your time because it makes it so enjoyable. And hire someone that resonates with you, not because someone else told you to hire them.
Well, thank you for the endorsement. I just see the potential and push you towards it. And lightly. Like I come off sometimes. I know sometimes I could be a little heavy, but
No, you have been great for me.
thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, thank you for spending some time with me. And I will see you next week.
Next week.
All right.
See
Bye,
you.
Michelle.
Bye.